Even as a seasoned trainer and trainee, I have felt anxious in new gym environments, so I can only assume that newbies feel like a fish out of water, like all the eyes are on you, you're an imposter, you're a free weight fraud, and you are sure to fuck it up. And that's simply not a great headspace to enter your workout in, so let's go ahead and change that. I am Annie Miller, Certified Strength and Conditioning Specialist, and I help you learn as you train and enjoy your lifts again, which is literally my hope behind today's video, that you feel that you have the tools and the knowledge you need to move through the awkward fear of machines in the free weight section of the gym. Because quite frankly, you deserve to be there. At the end of this video, we are going to go over some Spitfire Q&A from some of my audience IG questions, so be sure to stick around for that. To be clear, this is not a video on first-time gym goers etiquette, how to not behave like a dickweed in the gym. Though when I asked my audience to reflect back to their beginner gym days, many of the questions that they had were in fact in regards to etiquette and behavior type questions, so that video is definitely in my queue for the future. Today's video is about your confidence or your client's confidence in using equipment and working their way around most public gyms. I don't have everything here that you would see in a commercial gym because, well, it is my home gym. And if you are interested in seeing everything in this home gym, be sure to check out my full garage gym tour video. So come on with me over to the rack. That's where we're gonna begin. You generally see half racks or full racks. This is a half rack with only 2 uprights rather than 4. The rack is where many of the free weight movements will happen. Pull-ups, squats, overhead press, not shrugs or curls. If you do shrugs or curls in the rack, you are a certified Tom without a truck. If that's not a thing, I just made it one. Check. Do appropriate movements in appropriate places. We will discuss that in the etiquette video that I make, 5 sure. All right then, anatomy of the rack. We already determined that these are your uprights. On the uprights, you're gonna see holes and numbers. These are where we can attach things to the uprights, like the J-hooks. The J-hooks are where the barbell is racked and unracked from. Racked is the term that we use to refer to where the bar is held even on your body, so we have a back rack and a front rack position. When the bar is in the rack like this, it is racked. When the bar is being taken out of the rack, it is being unracked. If working with a trainer, you might have heard them say, and go ahead and re-rack it. This is just simply returning the barbell to the J-hooks. These are your safety bars or your pins. These might look different depending on the rack that you're in. In a full rack, it might be metal poles that rest between the front and the rear upright. And the usage of these safety bars or safety pins should be used during squatting or benching if possible. If you're in a fixed half rack, like my old school LA Fitness rack, then bench pressing is not possible. And actually stationary bars are too high for squatting for most people as well. This rack for me anyway was most functional for things like RDLs off the front or overhead press in the rack. The safety pins should be set roughly 1 inch or so below your bottom position, whether that is bench press or a squatting movement. And please be sure to test the height of these with an empty barbell before you actually load the barbell and use it for your working sets. Their function, as the name suggests, is for safety, for when you need to bail out of a lift for whatever reason. The most common reason being that the weight is too heavy and you get pinned at the bottom of the movement or scared and need to exit stage left. I have found with many of my one-on-one clients over the years that they aren't lifting loads that they'd likely fail with anyway, yet having the pins set gives them some confidence under the barbell. It will make them feel safe. Go figure. Before we move on to the actual movements done inside of the rack with a barbell, I want to cover doing pull-ups in the rack. When getting in and out of a banded pull-up, always start from an elevated position if possible. So stand on a bench or a box or even the safety pins if they are secure, or if you need assistance and don't have bands, then go ahead and just use an assisted pull-up machine. These are not actually a part of the rack, but they are called collars, and if you are doing any barbell work in the rack or out of the rack, you're likely going to be using them. So collars go on the end of a loaded barbell in order to stop any weight that you have on the bar from shifting or sliding off. This is not always for bench press though, particularly if you are benching without a spotter. Keeping the weights free to slide off either end is actually safest in lifting near maximal loads. That way, if you get pinned without safety bars or a spotter, you can tilt the barbell to one side and let the weight slide off, and then tilt to the other side and let the other weight slide off. I would rather you have a spotter or safety bars to be clear when benching, but if not, don't use collars. Nothing will make you feel more weak than a classic metal spring collar. Using collars is really just a risk analysis for yourself or your clients. Generally, I don't use them at all unless I am moving maximal loads in overhead press, squat, and hip thrusts. For bench and deadlift, I tend to just leave them off. That is based on the variance in excess side-to-side movements that I find with these exercises, therefore shifts in weight on the bar. For squat and overhead press, there is an unracking and a physical stepping back before actually getting your feet set for the movement. That just means that there's more room for the plates to slide from one end of the barbell to the other. This may also make sense for touch and go deadlifts. In the setup for hip thrusts, rolling the weight forward and backward in that setup process can move the plates as well. Thus, in my opinion, collars or clips make sense. Now you're familiar with the rack, so let's get the barbell from the rack without embarrassing yourself. When you're unracking and re-racking the barbell for any exercise, always minimize excess movement. For the squat or the overhead press, say you're gonna take like a step, any small adjustments needed there, normally a little stanky leg or foot screw situation, and then you're good to go. If you know, you know. Get good and set underneath the bar, whether you're doing a squatting or a pressing pattern. You should be locked and loaded before actually removing the barbell from the rack. Stepping back should only be to create space between you and the J-hooks before doing whatever movement is programmed. Take your time here. Don't feel bad for working this section of a movement. The setup should be the same every time if you can control that. Once you're done with the movement, to get the barbell back into the rack, to re-rack the weight, no matter the movement, you're going to step in, drive the barbell into the rack, and then drop directly down, keeping forward pressure the whole time. When you get it right and gain some confidence, it's one of the most satisfying sounds ever. To backtrack a little bit, it will be vital and very helpful for you to determine your setup heights for different movements inside the rack. Let's look at the setup for the rack for squat, overhead press, and bench press. The barbell should always be at the top of your armpit crease for your overhead press and your squat, so the J-hook position is what's gonna be at that armpit crease level. You should never have to go up onto your tippy toes in order to unrack the barbell for squats, overhead press, anything being racked in that front or back rack position. Likewise, for bench press, you should never have to unpack your shoulders in order to unrack the weight for bench press. We lose stability and you just risk unnecessary injury when we have to get unset from those starting positions inside the rack. Most racks have numbers for reference. As I mentioned earlier, this will be how you remember your typical setup for these different movements. Don't be afraid to adjust if needed. The height should allow you to rack and unrack the weight seamlessly. For bench press, your eyes should be directly underneath the bar as a reference point when you get set up. Let the rest fall into place. Once you unrack the barbell, it's going to be directly over the top of your shoulders, and then as you lower the barbell down, it should end at the sternum or the bottom of your sports bra and return back to being stacked over your shoulders at the top. That is all for the rack and the barbell. If you need more extensive instruction on setup and guidance through different exercises, please be sure to check out Movement 101. It's my movement encyclopedia with demo videos and coaching videos with cueing for over 100 exercises from body weight to dumbbell to barbell. Now we're going to go over the flat bench or adjustable bench as a piece of equipment. Benches are going to come in various heights, but generally speaking, you want your bench to be at or below your knee level. If that's not the case, you can always elevate your feet on plates or wedges if needed, and that applies to bench, hip thrusts, Bulgarian split squats, and more exercises. For the love of all things holy, the small part of the bench is the seat. That is not the head. This is the head. This is the seat. Head, seat. Head, seat. Some benches are not mobile and or they don't have wheels, so before embarrassing yourself attempting to move it, be sure to check first. One end of the bench will have wheels. Normally that is at the head of the bench, and generally the end that is the seat is going to have the handle to lift and actually move the bench. Pick that shit up like you mean it. Execute a 40-point turn if you have to. Just do it with confidence. Set it down, get to work, fuck the haters. Considering I literally have no machines to show you, Let's just go over some of the basics that tend to cause people to hesitate when approaching a machine in a gym setting. If you're new to a machine or a piece of equipment, you'll get it. I just want you to know that. Leave time and space to mess around and find the most comfortable setup with a piece of equipment. People will literally sit on these machines and text 17 friends between sets. You can take 2 freaking minutes to properly get set up with a machine. No one is watching, and if they are, they probably think that their shit doesn't stink, and they're wrong. Generally speaking, every machine has a seat adjustment, an apparatus adjustment, and then the actual load adjustment as well. If you get on a machine and it feels wonky, look for options to switch it up. Take a breath. Look at the seat. Can you move the seat up or down, forward or backward? Go ahead and try that first. If you happen to be working the arms, back, or legs, can you bring the end of the lever closer or further away from you? Go ahead and see if that helps. Typically, the adjustment will be via a pull in and out pin situation. Sometimes they're stuck or too sticky to move, which is momentarily embarrassing when you realize that you can't move it, you can't adjust it. It happens, just move along with the next exercise. I am very pro machines. There are a lot of gaps that you can fill within training by using them. Don't be afraid, but get the setup right. The last thing I want to cover is actually a movement, which I know I said I wasn't going to go over in this video, but this particular movement stops a lot of women in particular, so I'm going to give it some space, and that is box jumps. These are a fear for so many women, and I don't think that they need to be. It's not about the box height. Your goal is explosiveness, to generate as much force down into the floor as possible, to use your stretch reflex, and to jump as high as possible. You can land softly on, not that you have to bring your knees up to your chest and land in a deep squat on in order to complete the jump. Be sure to land soft or with soft knees. Repeat. That's it. That's my piece on box jumps. If there's something that I haven't covered about the gym that happens to intimidate you, drop it down in the comments below and hopefully I can help. Now for that bonus Spitfire Q&A. These questions are from my Instagram question boxes, and it's a very small space to submit questions. So if they're worded a little bit funny, just know that I understand what the person is trying to ask. If calories in the cardiac machines are accurate, and why I might need heart rate handles. I assume heart rate handles are referring to the metal sensors that you might see in cardio machines at the gym. These are taking your pulse and they can be wildly inaccurate. I suggest wearing, if it's within your budget, a heart rate monitor like Polar. Make sure to check out my video in a few weeks on a Polar heart rate monitor and chest strap. I will do a full review, who it's for, why you might use it, and how it can work with your strength training. These allow you to know where your heart rate is at, what zone you're in, etc., if that's something that you are paying attention to within your conditioning. To answer the other part of the question, no, the calories are very generic and not accurate on these machines. You should not be depending on them. I do not recommend it. 0 out of 5 stars. Different advantage between huge barbell plates and smaller ones. Same weight. I'm going to assume that this person means bumper plates and then all other metal or plastic types of plates in comparable loads. For deadlift or Olympic lifting, you can pull from the same height and the setup position regardless of the load, which is a huge win for movement proficiency with bumper plates. Squat, bench, overhead press, that just looks like you're lifting more potentially if you're using bumper plates versus the metal plates that are smaller, but the same load as the bumper plates. If you want to be able to bounce weight off of the floor in a deadlift, rapid response, or in a touch and go style, then metal weights are going to be less ideal for that movement. For something like a hip thrust, regardless of the weight, this allows you to roll the bar over your hips comfortably and have room to do so. Again, that's using bumper plates versus metal plates that are under 45 pounds. So that's the real difference. There's not a benefit from a weightlifting or putting on muscle size standpoint. It is more just what makes sense for the movement that you're doing. Bumper plates make sense for some movements where metal plates are fine for others. It depends on what you're into. If you're doing hypertrophy or strength training, then this video should give you a pretty solid place to start from. No matter how much information you take in, the most valuable learning is going to happen on the floor through the reps, through the experience. So go get some, and I will catch you guys in the next video.